Admiral Kia stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the stars through the massive viewing window behind him. Spread across 3 light-years of space was the largest invasion fleet the Valkyrie had ever assembled. 9,700 warships, 2 million soldiers, enough firepower to burn a dozen worlds to ash. He was proud, he was confident, he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. The orders had come from the High Council 6 months ago. The message was simple and direct. Humanity was growing too fast. Their colony ships were spreading across the galaxy like weeds. Their population was doubling every few decades. They were loud, aggressive, and showed no respect for the established order of civilized species. They needed to be stopped. They needed to be conquered. They needed to learn their place. Cathuros had studied the intelligence reports carefully. Humans were a young species, barely 300 years into space travel. Their technology was primitive compared to the Valkyrie. Their ships were slow, their weapons were weak, their shields could barely stop a training laser. But the most important detail was this: humans were divided. They had hundreds of nations, thousands of languages, and millions of reasons to hate each other. They fought wars among themselves constantly. They could not even agree on basic things like government or religion or how to treat their own people. This made them weak. This made them easy targets, or so Cathos believed. He turned away from the window and walked to the tactical display. His officers stood at attention around the glowing hologram of the solar system. Earth was there, a small blue dot surrounded by other planets. Mars had some human colonies. The asteroid belt had mining stations. The outer moons had research bases. It would all belong to the Valkyrie soon. Status report: Kira said. His second in command, a female named Vithara, stepped forward. All ships are in position, Admiral. The fleet is ready to jump. We can be at the edge of the Sol system in 4 hours. And the humans, any sign they know we are coming? None, Admiral. Their detection systems are too primitive. They will not see us until we are already there. Cathas allowed himself a small smile. This was going to be easy. The humans would see his fleet and surrender immediately. If they were smart, they would accept Valkyrie rule peacefully. If they were stupid, they would fight and die quickly. Either way, he would be home within a month. He pressed the communication button on his console. His voice went out to every ship in the fleet. 2 million soldiers heard his words. Warriors of the Dominion, he said, today we begin a great mission. The High Council has given us the honor of bringing a new species under our protection. The humans are young and foolish. They do not understand the ways of the galaxy. They need our guidance. They need our strength. They need our rule. He paused for effect. Some of them may resist. Some of them may fight. This is expected. Young species often struggle before they accept the truth. But we will be patient. We will be strong. We will show them that resistance is pointless. He raised his fist. For the Dominion, for the glory of our people, today we conquer Earth. The fleet erupted in cheers. Officers shouted battle cries. Soldiers banged their weapons against their armor. The sound echoed through 9,700 ships. Catharas ended the communication and nodded to Vitha. Begin the jump. Fleet moved as one. Reality twisted around them as they entered faster than Light travel. The stars blurred and stretched. Space. Folded like paper. 4 hours later they emerged at the edge of the Sol system. And on Earth, alarms began to scream. Dr. Sarah Chen was eating a sandwich. When the alert came through, she worked at the Deep Space Monitoring Station, chilly, watching the skies for asteroids and comets. It was usually boring work. Nothing ever happened. Today something happened. She dropped her sandwich and stared at her screen. The numbers made no sense. She ran the calculations. Again, then a third time. There were ships, thousands of ships. They had appeared from nowhere at the edge of the solar system. They were not human ships. Human ships did not move like that. Human ships did not have energy signatures like that. These were alien ships and they were heading toward Earth. Sarah picked up her phone with shaking hands. She called her supervisor, then she called the government emergency line. Within minutes, her small monitoring station was connected to every major government on the planet. The world was about to change forever. In Washington, President Martinez was pulled out of a budget meeting. In Beijing, Chairman Wu was woken from his sleep. In Moscow, President Vyulov was informed during his daughter's birthday party. In New Delhi, London, Berlin, Tokyo, and 100 other capitals, leaders received the same message. Aliens were coming. They were coming in large numbers. They would arrive in approximately 3 days. Emergency meetings were called. Military leaders gathered around tables covered in maps and reports. Scientists tried to analyze the alien ships. Intelligence agencies searched for any information that might help, but there was no information. Humanity had never met aliens before. They had no idea what these beings wanted. They had no idea how to fight them. They had no idea if fighting was even possible. Some leaders wanted to surrender immediately. Better to live under alien rule than die in a hopeless war. Others wanted to fight to the last human. Better to die free than live as slaves. The debates went on for hours. Time was running out. Then someone remembered Elena Vasquez. General Elena Vasquez had retired 5 years ago. She had spent 40 years in the military, rising from a young recruit to one of the most respected commanders in history. She had fought in 3 major wars. She had never lost a battle. She was known for 2 things: her brilliant tactical mind and her complete refusal to accept defeat. They found her in a small house in Argentina, tending to her garden. She was 73 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. But when they told her what was happening, those eyes lit up with fire. She flew to New York, where the United Nations had called an emergency session. Every major nation was represented. Every leader wanted answers. Every general wanted a plan. Vasquez walked to the front of the room and looked at the assembly, presidents and prime ministers, generals and admirals, scientists and advisors. All of them were afraid. She could see it in their eyes. I have read the reports, she said. Her voice was calm and steady. I have seen the numbers. 9,700 ships, 2 million soldiers, technology far ahead of our own. She paused. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to fall to our knees and beg for mercy. They expect us to be weak and divided, just like their intelligence reports say we are. She smiled. It was not a kind smile. They have no idea what they are walking into. A murmur went through the room. The Russian president leaned forward. General, with respect, how can you say that their fleet could destroy our entire military in hours? Our weapons cannot touch their ships. We have no chance. Vasquez nodded. You are correct. In a straight fight, we would lose quickly. Our ships are slower. Our weapons are weaker. Our shields are worse. If we try to fight them the way they expect us to fight, we will die. She pressed a button and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed the solar system with the alien fleet marked in red. But we are not going to fight them the way they expect. We are going to fight them the human way. She zoomed in on the asteroid belt. For 200 years, we have been mining these rocks. We have thousands of automated drones out there, moving asteroids around for resources. What if we use those drones differently? What if we turn the asteroids themselves into weapons? The room was silent. The aliens are coming in a straight line. They will pass through the asteroid belt if we accelerate the right rocks. At the right speed, we can hit them with projectiles they cannot dodge. No explosives needed, just physics, just rocks traveling at 30 kilometers per second. She zoomed out. This is just the beginning. We have 3 days. In 3 days, we're going to turn every planet, every moon, every station in the solar system into a weapon. We are going to use everything we have, and we are going to make these aliens regret the day they decided to invade our home. President Martinez raised his hand. General, even if this works, even if we hurt them badly, they still have overwhelming numbers. How do we win? Vasquez turned to look at him. Her eyes were cold. Mr. President, I have studied war my entire life. I have learned one truth above all others. Wars are not won by the side with the most ships or the best technology. Wars are won by the side that refuses to lose. Wars are won by the side that is willing to pay any price for victory. She looked around the room at every face. Are we willing to pay that price? Are we willing to fight until our last breath? Are we willing to do whatever it takes to survive? The room was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the leaders began to nod. Vasquez turned back to the hologram. Good, then let us begin. We have 3 days to prepare, and when those aliens arrive, they will learn something important about humanity. She clenched her fist. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We fight and we win. The room erupted in activity. Orders were given. Plans were made across the entire planet. Humanity began to prepare for war. The aliens were coming. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Valkyrie fleet entered the asteroid belt. On the morning of the 3rd day, Admiral Cathara stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with growing impatience. The journey had been long and boring. His soldiers were restless. They wanted action. They wanted glory. They were about to get more than they asked for. Admiral Vithara said, "We are detecting unusual movement in the asteroid field ahead." Keith frowned. What kind of movement? Multiple objects changing trajectory, small ones, possibly mining drones. She paused, studying her screen. This is strange. They appear to be pushing larger asteroids into new paths. Into what paths? Vithara's face went pale. Collision paths with our fleet. Kira's laughed. Asteroids, they think they can stop us with rocks. He shook his head. Let the point defense systems handle them. Continue forward. 200 ships in the vanguard pushed deeper into the asteroid belt. Their weapons were ready to blast any rock that came too close. but there were too many rocks. The humans had spent 3 days reprogramming every mining drone in the belt, thousands of machines built to move asteroids for resource extraction. Now had a new purpose. They attached themselves to rocks of all sizes and fired their engines at maximum power. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. The asteroids began to move. Not random movement, calculated movement designed by the best mathematicians and physicists on Earth, working together for 72 hours without sleep. The first asteroid hit the Valkyrie cruiser bright sword at 32 km/s. The ship's shields flashed bright blue. As they tried to absorb the impact, they failed. The rock punched through the hull like a fist through paper. The bright sword exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Then another ship was hit, and another and another. Kira's watched in disbelief as his tactical display lit up with warning signals. Ships were dying. His beautiful, powerful ships were being destroyed by rocks. Simple, stupid rocks. All ships evasive maneuvers, he shouted. Increase point defense fire. Destroy those asteroids before they reach us. The fleet tried to respond. Laser cannons fired in all directions, vaporizing smaller rocks, but the larger ones kept coming. The humans had calculated the angles perfectly. For every asteroid the Valkyrie destroyed, 2 more were already on their way. 40 ships were gone in the first 10 minutes. Then 60, then 100. Keith gripped the railing of his bridge so hard that his knuckles turned white. This was impossible. This was humiliating. He was losing ships to primitive weapons that were not even weapons at all. Push forward, he commanded. Get through the belt. We cannot stay here. The fleet accelerated. Ships burned through the asteroid field at maximum speed, trying to outrun the deadly rain of rocks. Some made it, many did not. By the time the surviving ships emerged on the other side, Keith had lost 240 vessels, 240 ships destroyed without ever seeing an enemy, destroyed by rocks and drones and human cleverness. He stood in silence for a long moment, staring at the tactical display. The numbers had changed. He had started with 9,700 ships. Now he had 9,460. It was a small loss compared to his total force, but it was a loss he had not expected, a loss that should not have happened. For the first time since the mission began, Catharus felt a tiny seed of doubt in his heart. The fleet continued toward Mars. The red planet grew larger in the viewing windows, its rusty surface dotted with human colonies. Catharus expected to find resistance there. He expected human ships and ground defenses. What he found was nothing. The colonies were empty. The humans had evacuated everyone days ago. Ships, equipment, supplies, even personal belongings, everything was gone. All that remained were empty buildings and silent streets. They ran. Vitharis said they knew they could not defend this position, so they abandoned it. Kiris nodded slowly. This made sense. The humans were retreating to Earth, concentrating their forces for a final defense. It was a smart strategy. For a weak species facing a stronger enemy, send landing parties to search the colonies. Perhaps they left something useful behind. Soldiers descended to the surface. They moved through the empty buildings looking for intelligence, technology, anything of value. They found nothing but dust and silence. Then they found the tunnels, deep Beneath the Martian surface, hidden under meters of rock and metal, the humans had built something, the Valkyrie. Soldiers discovered it by accident when one of them fell through a weak floor panel into a shaft below. The shaft led to a vast underground complex, hundreds of chambers connected by long corridors, all carved into the red stone, and in those chambers, standing in neat rows, were missiles, nuclear missiles. Thousands of them. The Valkyrie soldier who made the discovery tried to report it to his commanders, but before he could finish his message, the missiles launched. They came out of the ground like angry hornets bursting through hidden doors all across the Martian surface. Their engines burned white hot as they climbed toward the orbiting fleet. Each missile carried a warhead containing the compressed fury of a small sun. Heroes saw them coming, thousands of points of light rising from the planet below, heading straight for his ships. All ships, defensive position, he screamed. Shoot them down, shoot them all down. The fleet opened fire, laser cannons blazed, point defense systems worked. Over time, missiles exploded by the hundreds, filling the sky with fire and smoke. But there were too many missiles, and they kept coming, wave after wave, launched from silos hidden all over Mars. The humans had been preparing for this moment for years, hiding their weapons where no one would find them. The first nuclear warhead hit the cruiser's Silent Hunter. The explosion was blinding. A miniature sun bloomed in the darkness of space, vaporizing the ship and everything within a kilometer of it, and another. Heroes watched his ships die. The tactical display was a chaos of warning lights and death notices. 800 ships were gone. In less than an hour, 800 more were damaged, some badly. When the last missile was finally destroyed, when the fire and smoke began to clear, Keith took stock of his losses. He had entered Mars orbit with 9460 ships. He was leaving with 8,512. Nearly 1,500 ships lost before ever reaching Earth. He collapsed into his command chair, suddenly feeling very old and very tired. This was not what he had expected. This was not what anyone had expected. Vithra approached him quietly. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Keith stared at the tactical display for a long moment. Earth was still ahead. Earth was still the target. The High Council would never forgive failure. "Continue to Earth," he said. His voice was hoarse sorrow. "We still outnumber them. We can still win." But even as he said the words, he was not sure he believed them. As the fleet moved toward Earth, Kathos wrote a message to the High Council. He sat alone in his quarters, choosing his words carefully. The message needed to explain what had happened without making him look incompetent. It needed to prepare the Council for the possibility of further losses without suggesting defeat. It was the hardest message he had ever written. "High Council," he began, "I write to inform you of our progress in the Sol system. We have encountered unexpected resistance from the humans. They have proven to be more resourceful than our intelligence suggested." He paused, searching for the right words. "They have weaponized their environment in ways we did not predict. The asteroid belt was turned into a minefield. The planet Mars was turned into a missile platform. They did not try to fight us directly. They used tricks and traps and hidden weapons." He thought about the soldiers he had lost. Good warriors killed by rocks and bombs. It felt wrong. It felt dishonorable. The Humans do not fight like any species we have encountered before. They do not meet us in open battle. They do not follow the rules of civilized warfare. They fight like animals, using any advantage they can find, no matter how crude or desperate. He looked out his window at the stars, but the most disturbing thing is their willingness to use nuclear weapons. Among all civilized species, such weapons are considered too dangerous, too destructive, too terrible to use except in the most extreme circumstances. The humans use them freely. They have no fear of atomic fire. They embrace it. He shook his head slowly. I believe we have underestimated this species. They are not divided. They are not easy prey. They are something else entirely, something dangerous, something we have never faced before. He finished the message and sent it. Then he sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking about what lay ahead. Earth was waiting, the human home world, the source of all this resistance, the heart of their strange and violent species. What surprises did they have hidden there? What traps, what weapons? Quiroz did not know, and for the first time in his long career that uncertainty frightened him. On Earth, General Vasquez received the reports from Mars. The asteroid attack had worked better than expected. The nuclear missiles had worked better than expected. The aliens had lost nearly 1,500 ships before even reaching the planet, but only a start. She stood in the command center beneath the mountains of Colorado, surrounded by screens and officers and the constant hum of activity. Every nation had contributed to this effort. American soldiers worked beside Russian engineers. Chinese scientists collaborated with European programmers. Old enemies had become allies in the face of extinction. They are 3 hours away, one of her officers reported. Approximately 8,500 ships remaining. Vasquez nodded. 8,500 ships was still a massive force, still enough to overwhelm Earth's defenses 10 times over, still enough to end humanity if they got the chance. But they were not going to get the chance. Is everything ready? She asked. Yes, General. All weapons are armed. All defenses are active. All units are in position. Vasquez looked at the main screen where the alien fleet was displayed as a cloud of red dots, moving steadily toward the blue dot of Earth. Good, she said. Let them come. We have more surprises waiting. She thought about the soldiers who had died on Mars, the ones who had stayed behind to maintain the missile silos. They had known they would not survive. They had volunteered anyway. That was the human way. Fight until the end. Never surrender, never give up. The aliens were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The Valkyrie fleet arrived at Earth on a Tuesday morning. 8,512 ships spread across the sky like a metal cloud, blocking out the sun over half the planet. People looked up from their homes and offices and saw the enemy for the first time. Some screamed, some prayed, some simply stared in silence. Admiral Keith looked down at the blue world below him. It was beautiful, he admitted. Green continents, blue oceans, white clouds swirling in delicate patterns, a jewel of a planet rich with life and resources. Soon it would belong to the Dominion. He activated the communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. His message would reach every radio, every television, every device on the planet. Below, people of Earth, he said, I am Admiral Keith of the Valkyrie Dominion. I come with an offer of peace. He paused. letting the words sink in. Your resistance has been impressive. You have shown courage and cleverness. Dominion respects these qualities. We do not wish to destroy you. We wish to guide you, to teach you, to help you take your proper place among the civilized species of the galaxy. He spread his arms in a gesture of generosity. Surrender now and you be treated fairly. Your people will be protected. Your culture will be preserved. You will join a community of worlds spanning thousands of light years. He lowered his arms. Refuse and you will be destroyed. The choice is yours. You have 1 hour to respond. He ended the transmission and sat back in his chair, confident that the humans would see reason. They had fought well. Yes, but surely they understood the situation. Surely they could see that further resistance was hopeless. He was wrong. General Vasquez watched the alien broadcast from her command center. Around her, officers and leaders from every nation waited for her response. The weight of human history pressed down on her shoulders. She thought about her grandmother who had survived a war when she was young. She thought about her father who had served in the military for 30 years. She thought about her daughter who was hiding in a bunker somewhere with her 2 children. She thought about what kind of world she wanted to leave behind. Then she picked up the microphone. Admiral Cathoras, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. My name is Elena Vasquez. I speak for the people of Earth. She took a breath. We have received your offer. We have considered your words and we have made our decision. She looked at the screens showing the alien fleet. You call us young. You call us primitive. You look at our divisions and see weakness, but you do not understand us at all. Her voice grew stronger. We have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We have survived wars, plagues, famines, and disasters that would have destroyed any other species. We have climbed out of the mud and reached for the stars with nothing but our bare hands and our stubborn refusal to die. She clenched her fist. You think we will surrender because you have more ships? You think we will kneel because you have better technology? You are wrong. We will never surrender. We will never kneel. We will fight you with everything we have, and when that is gone, we will fight you with our bare hands and our teeth. She leaned into the microphone. This is our home. This is our planet, and you are not welcome here. She paused. That is our answer. She cut the transmission. Around the world, people heard her words in bunkers and shelters, in cities and villages, in every corner of the globe. Humanity listened, and in that moment they were no longer Americans or Russians or Chinese or any other nationality. They were humans. They were Earthlings, and they were ready to fight. Keith heard the response. For a long moment he sat in stunned silence. Then anger rose in his chest, hot, burning. Anger at the arrogance of these primitive creatures. So be it, he said. Quietly, they have chosen death. He turned to Vithra. Begin the bombardment. Target their military installations first, then their cities. Show them what happens when they defy the Dominion. The order went out. Thousands of weapons charged, targeting systems locked onto positions across the planet below. Then the humans attacked. It came from everywhere at once. Submarines that had been sitting silent in the depths of the ocean launched their missiles. Underground silos on every continent opened their doors. Aircraft that had been hidden in camouflaged hangars took to the skies, but the most devastating attack came from space itself. For decades, humanity had been launching satellites, communication satellites, weather satellites, scientific satellites. The Valkyrie had scanned them and dismissed them as harmless civilian equipment. They were wrong. Half of those satellites were weapons platforms in disguise, rail guns powered by nuclear reactors, laser cannons hidden inside sensor arrays, kinetic projectile launchers masquerading as communication dishes. They all activated at once. Sky lit up with fire, missiles streak upward from the planet's surface. Satellites opened fire from orbit. Ground-based rail guns launched tungsten rods at impossible speeds. The Valkyrie fleet was hit from every direction simultaneously. Keith watched in horror as ships exploded around him. The humans had been preparing for this, not just for days or weeks, but for years. Every weapon they had built, every satellite they had launched, every missile they had hidden, it all came together in this moment. Return fire, he screamed. Destroy their weapons, all ships defensive formation. The fleet tried to respond. Valkyrie weapons were powerful, and they began destroying human missiles and satellites by the thousands, but for every weapon they killed, more kept coming. Humans had built an almost endless supply, hiding them in caves and bunkers and the depths of the ocean. And then came the hackers across the planet in basement and server rooms and secret facilities. The best computer experts on Earth launched their attack. They had been studying the alien communications for 3 days, looking for weaknesses, looking for ways in. They found them. The Valkyrie had never faced an enemy that could attack through their computer system. Their security was designed to stop other species that use similar technology and similar approaches. Human hackers were different. They were chaotic, creative, and completely unpredictable. Within minutes, the first ships lost contact with the fleet. Navigation systems began giving wrong coordinates. Weapons targeted the wrong positions. Communication channels filled with static and garbage data. Cathuros watched his beautiful fleet fall into confusion. Ships fired on empty space. Squadrons flew in the wrong directions. Officers screamed for orders that never came. For 6 hours, the Valkyrie fleet was blind and deaf and confused. The humans did not waste those 6 hours. Every weapon on Earth that could reach space was fired. Every missile, every rail gun, every laser, everything humanity had. It was not a coordinated attack. It was desperation. It was the fury of a species fighting for survival. When the Valkyrie finally restored their systems, when they could see and communicate again, they discovered the cost. 3,000 ships were destroyed. 3,000 more were damaged. In 6 hours, the humans had cut the fleet nearly in half. Kira stood on his bridge and stared at the tactical display. When the attack began, he had 8,500 ships. Now he had 5,200, and the humans were still fighting. He thought about his confident speech at the start of the mission. He thought about his certainty that this would be an easy conquest. He thought about all the assumptions he had made about humanity. Every single one of them had been wrong. The hours passed. The battle continued. Human weapons kept firing from the planet below, though with less intensity. Now, they were running out of ammunition, running out of tricks, but they had not run out of courage. Kira's watched the reports come in. human. Pilots flew their aircraft directly into Valkyrie ships using their own bodies as weapons. Ground crews launched missiles by hand when the automated systems failed. Scientists worked without sleep, finding new ways to hurt the enemy, and through it all the broadcasts continued. Human leaders spoke to their people, urging them to keep fighting. Music played on the radio, children's drawings were shown on television. Pictures of alien ships in flames. Pictures of human soldiers standing proud. It was madness. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. What are these creatures? Vithra whispered, standing beside Cathuros on the bridge. Why won't they give up? Kiraz shook his head. Slowly, I do not know. I have conquered 12 worlds. I have fought 7 species. None of them were like this. None of them fought so hard for so little chance of victory. He looked at the blue planet below. They were never divided, he said quietly. We thought their conflicts made them weak. We were fools. Their conflicts were practice. They have been training for war since before they left their caves. He closed his eyes. We have attacked a species of warriors, species that knows nothing but struggle and survival, and they will not stop fighting until every single one of them is dead. Thera was silent for a long moment, then she asked the question that had been hanging in the air. Can we still win? Cathas did not answer. He was not sure he knew anymore. On Earth, General Vasquez received the damage reports. The attack had worked better than anyone expected. The aliens had lost thousands of ships. Their fleet was in chaos, but humanity had paid a price. 2 cities were burning. Military bases were destroyed. Millions were dead, with millions more to follow, and the aliens were still there. 5,200 ships still orbited the planet, still enough to destroy everything. We hurt them, one of her officers said. We hurt them badly. Vasquez nodded. Yes, but it is not enough. They will reorganize. They will adapt, and when they do, they will come for us with everything they have left. She looked at the map of the world marked with destroyed cities and burning forests and the locations of the last human defenders. We need to be ready. When they land their soldiers, we need to make them pay for every meter of ground, every street, every building, every room. She turned to face her officers. This is our home, and we will defend it to the last breath. Outside, the alien fleet hung in the sky like a dark promise. The siege of Earth had begun, and humanity was far from finished. The invasion began on a Thursday morning. 2 million Valkyrie soldiers descended from the sky in landing craft, falling toward Earth like metal rain. They targeted the major cities first: New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and dozens of others. Admiral Kethos watched from orbit as his forces landed. This was what they had trained for: ground combat, face-to-face battle, the conquest of populations. In space, though, humans had surprised him with their tricks and traps. On the ground, his soldiers would show their true strength. Or so he believed. The landing craft touched down in Central Park, New York. 5,000 soldiers poured out, their weapons ready, their armor gleaming in the morning sun. They expected to find a terrified population ready to surrender. Instead, they found a city that had become a fortress. Every building was a defensive position. Every street was a kill zone. Every window hid a sniper. The humans had spent days preparing, digging trenches, building barricades, placing explosives in strategic Locations: the first Valkyrie squad moved. Down 5th Avenue, they made it 3 blocks before the ambush. Bullets came from everywhere at once. Homemade explosives detonated beneath their feet. Soldiers fell screaming. When the survivors retreated, they found their landing craft on fire. Human fighters had crept through the subway tunnels and attacked from behind. The 5,000 soldiers who landed in Central Park were cut off, surrounded, and slowly destroyed. Over the next 12 hours, it was the same story. In every city, in Beijing, the Valkyrie landed in Tiananmen Square. They expected to march through the city and establish control within hours. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a maze of narrow streets and ancient buildings. Human soldiers appeared and disappeared, like ghosts, firing a few shots and then vanishing into hidden passages and underground tunnels. The Valkyrie had superior weapons. They had better armor. They had advanced communication systems and tactical computers. None of it mattered. The humans knew their cities. They knew every alley, every building, every hiding place. They struck fast and hard, then melted away before the Valkyrie could respond. By the end of the first day, the Valkyrie had lost 20,000 soldiers in Beijing alone. They controlled exactly 3 blocks. In Moscow, the battle was even worse. The Russian winter had arrived early, and the Valkyrie soldiers were not prepared for the cold. Their armor was designed for temperate climates. Their equipment began to fail in the freezing temperature. The humans used this against them. They attacked at night. When the cold was worst, they let the Valkyrie chase them through the frozen streets, then watched as their enemies collapsed from hypothermia. They set fires to draw soldiers into ambushes. They flooded streets with water that froze into deadly ice. Russian commander, a young woman named Katia Vyulov, became famous for her tactics. She led her fighters through the Moscow subway system, striking at Valkyrie positions and then disappearing underground. The aliens learned to fear the sound of her voice on the radio, calling out targets and coordinates. Let them freeze, she said in one intercepted broadcast. Let them feel what it is like to fight on our ground, in our weather, against our people. They wanted Earth. Let them have a taste of it. The Battle of Sao Paulo changed everything. The Valkyrie had landed 50,000 soldiers in the Brazilian city, their largest ground force anywhere on Earth. They expected to quickly overwhelm the defenders and establish a major base of operations. For 3 days they pushed into the city, building by building, street by street. They advanced through fierce resistance. The human defenders fell back, taking heavy casualties. It seemed like the Valkyrie were finally going to win a clear victory. Then the trap closed. General Vasquez had planned it carefully. She had allowed the Valkyrie to advance, drawing them deeper and deeper into the city. She had evacuated most of the civilian population. She had positioned her forces in a massive circle around the enemy. On the 3rd day, she gave the order to attack. Humans came from every direction, not just soldiers, but civilians who had refused to leave. Factory workers with hunting rifles, teachers with baseball bats and knives, grandmothers with homemade explosives strapped to their chests. The Valkyrie fought back with everything they had. Their weapons cut down humans by the hundreds, but for every human who fell, 2 more took their place. They climbed over the bodies of their dead friends and kept coming. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, not a single Valkyrie soldier in Sao Paulo was still alive. 50,000 of them, the largest force on the planet, destroyed completely. The human casualties were far worse. Over 200,000 dead, 3 times as many wounded. Almost a quarter of the city was destroyed, but the city was still flying Brazilian flags. When Cathoris received the report, he sat in silence. For a long time, 50,000 soldiers gone. His best troops, his most experienced units, wiped out by a mob of civilians. With primitive weapons, they took 10 casualties for every one of ours, Vithara said quietly. They lost 200,000 people. And they consider it a victory, Keithus replied. They are calling it a great triumph. He shook his head in disbelief. What kind of species considers such losses acceptable? What kind of species keeps fighting when the cost is so high? The weeks passed. The Valkyrie pushed deeper into human territory, paying for every meter with blood. They took some cities at terrible cost. They lost others completely. The map of Earth became a patchwork of controlled zones, contested areas, and places too dangerous to enter, and everywhere the humans kept fighting. They fought with guns and bombs and missiles. They fought with knives and clubs in their bare hands. They fought in the streets and the buildings and the tunnels beneath the ground. They fought in the forests and the mountains and the deserts. They never stopped fighting. Cathus received reports every day of new attacks, new losses, new disasters. A convoy ambushed on a highway, a base overrun during the night, a supply ship shot down by a teenager with a homemade missile launcher. His soldiers were exhausted. They were frightened. They had been told this would be an easy conquest, a quick victory against a weak species. Instead, they found themselves in a nightmare that never ended. Some soldiers refused to fight anymore. Some went mad from the constant stress. Some killed themselves rather than face another day in this hell. The officers tried to maintain discipline, but it was getting harder. The Valkyrie were not used to this kind of war. They were used to quick victories, to enemies who surrendered when they saw overwhelming force. They did not know how to fight an enemy that would not give up no matter what. One night, Kethos walked through a field hospital on one of his ships. The beds were full of wounded soldiers there, bodies broken by human weapons. Many would not. He stopped beside a young soldier whose legs had been blown off by an explosive. The boy, barely old enough to serve, looked up at him with empty eyes. Admiral, the boy whispered, why won't they stop? Keith had no answer. He thought about all the species the Dominion had conquered, the Tari who surrendered after their capital was bombed, the Vorshi who negotiated peace after losing their fleet, the Kranther who simply gave up when they saw they could not win. None of them had fought like this. None of them had been willing to pay such a price. He looked at the wounded soldiers around him and made a decision. Send a message to all ground commanders, he said to Vithara. Begin withdrawal operations. Pull all forces back to the landing zones. Vithara stared at him. Admiral, we are retreating. We are not retreating, Keith said. We are cutting our losses. We cannot win this ground war. Every day we stay, we lose more soldiers for nothing. We need to change our strategy. He walked to the viewing window and looked down at the burning planet below. Perhaps we should destroy them from orbit. Perhaps we should turn their cities to glass and their oceans to steam. But even then I'm not sure they would stop fighting. He turned back to Vithara. Begin the withdrawal. We need to regroup. We need to think. We need to find a way to beat these creatures that does not involve dying on their ground. The orders went out across the planet. Valkyrie forces began pulling back. They retreated from Moscow and Beijing and New York. They abandoned their bases and their equipment. They left their dead behind. Of the 2 million soldiers who had landed on Earth, fewer than 80,000 made it back to the ships. The rest were dead, captured, or missing. 4 months of brutal fighting, 4 months of blood and fire and death, and the humans were still standing, still fighting, still refusing to give up. Keith stood on his bridge and watched the last transports return. His invasion force was destroyed. His ground commanders were dead or broken. His soldiers were shells of what they had been, and Earth was still unconquered. He had finally learned the truth about humanity. They were not weak. They were not divided. They were not easy prey. They were the most dangerous species the Dominion had ever faced, and he had made the mistake of attacking their home. Admiral Kethoras stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion and looked at what remained of his fleet. The tactical display told a story of complete disaster. He had entered the Sol system with 9,700 ships, now floating in orbit around Earth. He had fewer than 400 still operational. The rest were debris captured or too damaged to move. Of those 400, only a handful could make the journey home. The war had lasted 4 months, 4 months of fighting, dying, and losing. 4 months of watching his certainty crumble into dust. It was over, not with a grand victory, not with a proud surrender, but with the quiet realization that he could not win. He could not even continue. His fleet was broken. His soldiers were dead. His mission had failed completely. Vitha approached him quietly. Her uniform was torn and dirty. She had lost an arm in the fighting and now wore a temporary replacement made of metal and wire. She looked as tired as he felt. Admiral, she said softly, the engineers have completed their assessment. 17 ships can achieve faster than light travel. The rest are too damaged. 17 ships out of 9,700. Less than 2/10 of 1%. Cathas closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about all the soldiers who had trusted him, all the families who had sent their children to serve under command, all the promises he had made about easy victory and glorious conquest. Prepare those ships for departure, he said. Load as many survivors as possible. We are leaving. And the other ships, the ones that cannot travel. Cathos was silent for a long moment. The crews will have to choose. They can try to surrender to the humans, or they can. He did not finish the sentence. Vithan nodded. She understood. Some would choose to die rather than fall into human hands. After everything they had seen, after everything they had experienced, she could not blame them. The evacuation took 2 days. 80,000 soldiers, the remnants of a 2 million strong invasion force, crowded into 17 ships. They stood shoulder to shoulder in corridors and cargo bays, barely able to move. The air was thick with the smell of fear and exhaustion. Before he gave the order to leave, Catharas broadcast one final message to the humans below. He owed them that Much people of Earth, he said, I am Admiral Kethos. I came to your world with an army intending to conquer you. I was wrong. He paused, gathering his thoughts. You have taught me something. Today, you have taught me that not every species can be conquered, not every world can be taken. Some beings are simply too stubborn, too brave, too willing to die for their freedom. He looked down at the blue planet. One last time, I do not know if we will meet again. I do not know what the future holds for either of our peoples, but I want you to know this. I have fought wars across the galaxy. I have conquered worlds and defeated armies. In all my years, I have never faced an enemy like you. His voice grew quiet. You have earned my respect and my fear. He ended the transmission. Then he gave the order. All ships begin jump sequence. We are going home. The 17 ships aligned their engines. Reality twisted around them, and then they were gone, leaving behind the debris of 9,683 warships and the bodies of nearly 2 million soldiers. Earth had survived. Keith spent most of that time in his quarters writing his report for the High Council. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. He wrote about the asteroid attack and the nuclear missiles. He wrote about the cyber warfare and the orbital weapons. He wrote about the ground invasion and the battles in the cities and the massacre at Sao Paulo. But most of all, he wrote about the humans themselves. They are not like any species in the Dominion's records. He wrote, they are not rational in the way we understand rationality. They do not calculate costs and benefits the way civilized beings do. They fight with their hearts, not their heads. He thought about the soldiers who flew their aircraft into his ships, civilians who charged his positions with kitchen knives, the children who drew pictures of burning alien ships and hung them in their windows. We thought their divisions made them weak. We were fools. Their divisions were merely practice for the real fight. They have been at war with themselves since the beginning of their history. Conflict is in their blood. Battle is in their bones. He paused, remembering the final days. They took 10 casualties for every one of ours. They lost hundreds of thousands in single battles, and they called it victory. They celebrated. They sang songs about their dead and vowed to avenge them. He shook his head. No species should be this willing to die. No species should embrace such losses. But the humans do. They always have. They survived on a death world, fighting everything, including each other, and they emerged stronger for it. He wrote his final recommendation. The Sol system must be quarantined. Novel Valkyrie ship should ever enter human space again. Not for war, not for trade, not for any reason. Mark them as too dangerous to contact. Mark their world as forbidden. He signed the report. These beings cannot be conquered. They can only be survived. The High Council received the report with shock and disbelief. 9,700 ships sent, 17 returned, 2 million soldiers dispatched, 80,000 survived. The greatest invasion force in Dominion history, destroyed by a single primitive species. Some council members demanded that Catharus be executed for his failure. Others wanted to send another fleet, a larger one, to finish what he had started. But the wisest members listened carefully to his report. They studied the recordings from the battle. They watched the footage of humans dying by the thousands and still refusing to surrender. They saw the look in human eyes the absolute determination to fight until the end. And they understood. The motion passed. Unanimously, a beacon was constructed and sent to the edge of human space. It broadcast in every known language, warning to all who might come near. Danger, this system is quarantined. The species within cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be conquered. They cannot be controlled. They fight without logic. They die without regret. Approach at your own risk. The beacon added one final line translated from the words Keith had spoken in his report. These beings can only be survived on Earth. The celebrations lasted for weeks. People danced in the streets of the ruined cities. They hugged strangers and wept for the dead and thanked whatever gods they believed in for their survival. General Vasquez received a hero's welcome. She stood before the United Nations and received medals from every nation that still had a government. She listened to the speeches and the praise and the promises of rebuilding. But when she finally returned home, she sat in her garden and looked up at the stars. She thought about everything that had happened, everything that had been lost, everything that had been won. Aliens were gone, but they would tell others about Earth. They would spread stories about the species that could not be conquered, and sooner or later, someone else would come, someone curious, someone ambitious, someone who thought they could succeed where the Valkyrie had failed. Humanity needed to be ready. She picked up her phone and called the new Secretary General. We need to talk, she said, about the future, about defense, about what happens when the next fleet arrives. The Secretary General sighed. Can't we have a few months of peace first? Vasquez looked up at the stars again. Somewhere out there the Valkyrie were telling their story. Somewhere out there other species were listening. No, she said, we cannot. The universe knows about us now. They know we can fight. They know we can win, but they also know we exist. She stood up and walked inside. The war is not over. It has only just begun. 50 years later, humanity launched its first interstellar warship. The UES Defiance carried weapons that would have seemed like magic to the people who fought the Valkyrie. It was faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything Earth had ever built. On its bridge, the captain, a young woman whose grandmother had died in the Battle of Sao Paulo, gave the order to jump to faster than light speed. Where are we going? Her first officer asked. The captain smiled. It was not a kind smile. To introduce ourselves to the neighbors, to let them know that we remember what happened, and to make sure they never forget what we are. The ship jumped into the darkness between stars. Humanity was no longer waiting for the next invasion. They were bringing the fight to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same. Somewhere in deep space, the Valkyrie beacon continued its endless warning. Ships of a dozen species approached, scanned its message, and turned away. None of them wanted to face the beings inside. The beacon broadcast its final line over and over forever. They cannot be conquered. They can only be survived. Earth turned beneath the stars, healing its wounds, building its strength, preparing for whatever came next. The humans were ready. They had always been ready. It was what they